Radio Okitalk, Radio Okitalk, von Mensch zu Mensch.
Welcome to the Wizard of Odd, edition 12 with Bryan Lahr. Jin Shin Jitsu energy techniques. Hello, Bryan.
How are you this morning, Raphael? Or afternoon for you? It's a beautiful day in Miami, that's for sure. It's like gorgeous here, and it's been a really interesting few weeks for sure. What an event!
What an event indeed. Well, just today it's kind of chilly, but we already had a few days of perfect weather and amazingly perfect clear blue sky. And I've asked around, even some others can barely remember any day where this was the case.
Yeah, and how about that full moon last week? Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo!
Indeed.
So I'm really excited about the show today. I've been trying to come up with different things that people can do in their own space that can help. We're living in this ocean of fear that is just so thick and palpable. It's like you can almost touch it, And I've been digging around for different techniques people can do on their own in their home and help alleviate some of the emotional intensity. I have some friends that have just gone off the edge with like fear and projecting. It's that 9 of Swords. The 10 of Swords is awful because they've fallen and you're dead. But it's over, and whatever was going to happen happened, and now it's like moving on from there. The 9 of Swords, not that there's a single bad card in the deck, but it's one of my least favorites to get because, my Aquarian air sign, that it takes on that like overthinking quality anyway. And, the 9 of Swords is laying there with the swords hanging over you, and you're waiting for them to drop. And while you're waiting for them to drop, you're sitting there just constructing how bad it's going to suck in your own mind and what it's going to feel. Oh my God. And this is going to be awful. And that's going to be awful. And then when the 10 of Swords actually does happen, it's never as bad as you imagined it. It's never as bad as the scenarios that you created in your head and drove energy to. So we're kind of living in a 9 of Swords moment, like all around people are like worst case scenarioing it and, focusing on all the things that are really awful and horrible and truth be told, in the middle of all of this, there's been some real miracles as well. So anyway, that's the whole point of the Jin Shin Jitsu talk for today. So let me tell you a little back. Go ahead.
Briefly, before we go into this, as you mentioned, the 9 and the 10 of Swords, I find it interesting that you mentioned this. So of course, as I initially learned from you, or through you as well, Faith Trevane and Dusty Bunkers, The Divine Triangle, I can never mention too often, because it puts together astrology,
that's true.
astronomy.
I love that. One of my favorite books. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I actually got it on your recommendation. And then after a few years, after pretty much having absorbed it, and even I think I found it online, much of it can even be read online, I gifted it to a friend with a book because it was like, this is a good place to start. So anyhow, the 9 of Swords here would be the 63, 10 of Swords would be the 64. And what I find, at least, my own individual life lesson is 8 of Swords. So it's pretty close, let's say.
Wow.
So I contemplated that a lot, which is, the 62. And the 63 for me actually is also an idea of waking up. in terms of waking up to a higher awareness, because I believe you have an individual laying in bed, and it's kind of true. The swords are looming in a sense, and there certainly is also this like terror projection, the limitation of the mental sphere in a sense, in terms of, as long as it's still bound to some, ego limitations, can only always be pressuring and terrorizing. However, it could also be seen as, waking up to a new layer of reality. And then a 10 of swords, when the individual is laying dead on the beach, 10 swords in his back, and I guess, the wave is going to carry him away pretty soon. I actually see this as a very, very positive process, because mental constructs always must be built up, and eventually, once your own energy or your own frequency exceeds these constructs, they must always be destroyed. And in that sense, the limitation, not the ego itself, but the limitation of the ego within the fool's journey must be killed over and over and over again. What do you think about that?
I've died so many times, and it's that moment of death that is your doorway to the next level of it. And it is, it's like, I have truths that are my truths that like I've put together based on experience and the things I've learned and gone through in my life. But those truths are, I prefer to call them truths of the moment now, because I'm always open to new information. And if that information turns out to be better and, not negates, but like eclipses what I had thought before, I'm really willing to let go of that and move into the next one. And those are like little deaths. When you freely give up your hold on your worldview, and it sort of gets scraped off and erased, and you make a new one, that's a death. And it's interesting. I've kind of gone through, man, if you think about how many times just mentally or on something you've learned or on kind of many levels of that, I'd probably say I've died hundreds of times in my life. But what's kind of curious is, I've got like 6 decades now, and it's like at the beginning of all of those decades, I physically died twice. Physically died when I was around 11 years old, and then again when I was around 19. I had some physical things that happened that I almost died, and then when I was 50, I did as well. And it's like each one of those times created a scenario where I just let that I let that person that was go, and then like pulled out all, there used to be a show with a comedy show with a comedian named Lily Tomlin, and she did this sketch where she was like an old time phone operator, and she sat in front of one of those switchboards they used to have that had all the wires plugged in, making the connections. And that's always been this really great metaphor for me. And it was like each one of those times was you pulled out all of those connections and left the board blank, and then went back in and started adding new ones and going back into the, it's not like all of what you felt was bad or outmoded, but a lot of it was. But there, you go back and you start connecting, especially once you get past like, your teen years, early 20s, you've been living a person that you were sort of programmed to be up until that time by your parents, by your peers, by society at large, telling you what you had to do and what were the goals for a successful life. And, those things, go away, and you start constructing the person that you want to be, and take responsibility for being the the soul that you desire to be and aspire to be, rather than just accepting what you were programmed to be. And so I think that the ten of Swords card is an excellent card as well. It doesn't always represent pleasure. Those, the ego just rebels when you go to kill it, or take something away from it that it thinks it owns, and it can really run amok and create havoc in a lot of ways. But that's also the moment of greatest opportunity, and it seems like just my own observations over the years, it seems like it takes a monumental event, a death threat, or some sort of collapse of a world view in order for people to make real changes, and like I've lost a lot of weight in the last year or so, and got really a couple years actually, and got really in good shape again. I've been eating really right, and oh man, it just feels so good. And I can't tell you how many people I've had ask me, well, dude, how'd you lose that weight? And I would start to tell them the things I was eating, and how I had shifted focus from eating food as a emotional reward or pleasure of some kind, and that was the main drive to my food consumption, and change that to providing fuel for my machine, and most of the time, I'd say 95% of the time, you get the face where they crinkle their face up and go, man, I couldn't do that. Well, yeah, you could. You just don't want to give up your bread. You just don't want to stop eating your Twinkie at midnight every night, and, so it does take when large calamitous events happen that sort of, without your choice, destroy what was at that time. It seems like it's easier in those moments for people to actually latch on to change and change their habitual, routines. We're such creatures of habit, and the older you get and the more ingrained you get in those mindsets, the more difficult that is to just decide to change and then change, but so I think on all levels that Ten of Swords is a really intense card. And the Nine of Swords is also kind of cool if you look at it, that 63. That 63 is part of the Tesla sequence of vortex mathematics, which is an amazing area of study, and a really worthwhile area to, maybe we'll do a show on that coming up later. Are you familiar with the vortex mathematics, Tesla's little scheme, the 369 scenario?
Yes, I am familiar with that, of course. For years I've seen, the memes and so on, and then I've did some, not saying that I completely grok it, but I've looked at the basics of the whole vortex mathematics, and I'm aware of it. And my own, let's say, individual pet experience or whatever with this whole thing is that, as you know, I'm doing conscious channeling, and eventually I was asking for a name. And then just in one particular moment where, I wasn't thinking of anything or whatever, this name came up, and I was kind of aware in that moment that this is, let's say, the message. If I want a name, that's the name I'm going to get for that particular mask, which is like a Sasani type mask, so associated with Bashar civilization. And the name I got was Ringo. I may have mentioned this before. And initially, of course, I thought of the Beatles and so on. I was like, okay, I'm not even really a Beatles fan or something. What the, heck is this supposed to be even? But I was like, okay, I gotta roll with it. And then I was like, well, and this is another thing very much associated, which I also learned through you as well, or got introduced to through you and highly recommended. If one develops a numerological understanding for the world and archetypical understanding, understands numbers and gematria and tarot archetypes and so on, then one always has alternative ways of interpreting everything. And if one then also has the trust in one's own higher self that any information will be presented in a way that it can be unlocked with the tools you already have, then that's, a great, at least, approach and perspective to everything. So what I did, therefore, is I took the name Ringo and made the numerological calculation, in this case, according to, again, Faith Trevane, Das Debunker's Divine Triangle. And of course, the numerological result for RINGO is 36, reduces to 9. So
there you go.
So it's 369, and in Vortex Mathematics, then there is this nice animation where you have kind of this infinity sign, which is also like a sign of my personal logo I made many years ago. And then in the positions of 3, 6, and 9, a triangle is formed. And a triangle actually is, let's say, the official flag and symbol for the Sasani civilization, which was kind of, let's say, quote unquote, where I was asking the name from. So yeah, that's the complete picture.
Awesome. Really awesome. The numbers, numbers are numbers. That's the thing I love about them. A frequency is a frequency, and it's way less open to emotional interpretation. Although it is, everything that you do, you're making some sort of connection or seeing how that works. But I love doing that same thing with anything important, is finding the numbers, and especially in the last number of years, those things wind up being some really specific numerological synchronicity on a bunch of different levels, and it's really fun to be able to see that. You really can't recommend that book too many times, because I got that in my early 20s, and man, I've worn out probably 5 copies of that book over the years. I never cease to be amazed at how I go back with new learning and new understanding that I've gained. And, I haven't read it for a year or so, and I'll go back and read it again from cover to cover. And it's like, wow, lots of depth to that. And such a really great, microscopic and telescopic view into your own vibrations and what works in harmony with your vibrations. So really, really awesome. So, cruising around the internet for a long time has been this guy named David Icke. Have you been familiar? I know there's a bunch of YouTube videos happening right now that are, getting a lot of play. I think you've seen some of those. But
yes, well, to be exact, just briefly, it's even worthwhile checking out. Of course, there's a David Icke YouTube channel. I believe it's called the Dot Connector Podcast, which is interesting because there, he's still publishing. But there was one particular video with London Real, where he, mentioned many different factors, many different perspectives, but also deliberately mentioned a potential connection between 5G networks as they had been deployed until now, let's say, or with a certain frequency band. I believe they talk about 60 gigahertz. And this apparent so-called coronavirus situation. And the interesting thing is that this then triggered YouTube to change their community guidelines only because of this particular video, and now deliberately and particularly and explicitly forbids bringing the so-called coronavirus with so-called 5G networks in connection. So just to give the backstory on that. Kindly continue. So basically, I was just about to say that it is not a YouTube video, this particular one, because there it got banned, then it got banned from Vimeo, and now it's still on BitChute. Yeah, so David Icke, London Real, or David Icke on BitChute, and probably other alternative platforms that are not engaging in censoring that much. But please, Bryan, continue.
You know, I've been familiar with David Icke for about 20 years. And, you know, somebody first turned me on to a book called The Biggest Secret. Are you familiar with that one by any chance?
I know of his books. I haven't really read any of his books. I've just seen different of his interviews and talks.
Well, one of the main things in that book was how we are being kind of ruled by a class of reptilian beings, reptilian shape-shifting beings, and you know, pretty much the entirety. He had been working with I think it was a South African. I could be mistaken on that. I know it was an African witch doctor, for shaman, for lack of better description, a guy named Credo Mutwa, and he exposed David Icke to the mindset that we are, like, all of our leaders and the people that are really in control are shape-shifting reptilians that eat blood and kill people, and a big pedophilia scenario. And you know, some of that stuff made sense on some levels, but some of it was just like imagining. I found it really difficult to connect that the Queen of England, you know, changes into a reptile and eats children. You know, I'm not saying that didn't happen, but it's really hard for me to like put oh yeah, that's a truth for me now, you know. And I sort of fell out of favor with him for a number of years, but in the last couple of years I've been seeing a number of videos on his opinions on what's happening socially in the world, the 5G stuff, and he's pretty close. I think he's really right on, and that would definitely be worth a look for anyone to scope out. And anything that they're trying so hard to keep you from hearing, I want to hear. You know, you know, you're not, no, you don't get to decide what I get to hear and what I don't. I want to hear it all and make up my own mind. And this whole censorship thing is getting really out of control, man. And YouTube deciding about content, and, you know, Google and all these guys, you know, trying to push a political agenda, you know, in the guise of a free communication platform is just kind of disgusting. So, yeah, I don't know if you've heard anything about this particular video. This is one of the videos that I got turned on to some time ago. I would imagine it's still, I don't know, it might not be on YouTube anymore, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. And it's called the 5G Apocalypse. And the thing that I kind of really latched, well, there were a couple things I latched onto about that video. Was one of the main people that they were interviewing in this was a weapons designer for the CIA, and that is what 5G was originally designed to be. And it's kind of scary and frightening. And even if you don't even if you're saying, oh well, you know, that's all just hypothetical nonsense, there's no proof for that, you know, 5G hasn't been out long enough for us to actually get statistical verifiable information on 5G yet. There's a lot of research that's been done, but you know, the practical application of it is so new that they don't know. But one of the other things in the 5G apocalypse that I think is really worthwhile to see are some bar graphs show at the 4G level what that energy does to your cellular body, and what, you know, the effects of that, like destruction of your immune system. It destroys cells. It causes DNA mutation and damage. Mentally, it does stuff like memory, short and long term memory loss, lack of attention, super lowered testosterone levels. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And in the middle, and about the middle of that video, it's kind of a long video. It's right around 20 minutes, 21 minutes. There is a congressional hearing where a very prominent, well-respected doctor is going down the list of things that are you know, happening, that they have like empirical data for, that is really hard to dispute. And, you know, so even at that level, we were getting bombarded. You know, the good thing about it is that 4G, because of the nature of the towers being spread out the way they were, there were areas of less influence here and there. But, you know, the 5G stuff is just constant coding, and, you know, it never stops and penetrates walls, and, like, man, it is just over the top. It's so many more times intense. The microwaves are at a much shorter wavelength, so that they can move faster with more energy, and you can watch your videos without any glitches. I mean, like, So anyway, you know, along with that David Icke video, I would highly recommend the 5G Apocalypse, just to give a scope.
Yes, and of course we've done especially France is doing quite a few shows also on Okitalk, in particular in regards to Austria as well, and the whole 5G situation. And even if we just take it on a very simple level, then one may say that, generally speaking, you know, if one still has a naive trust in what we now call government, which of course is only ourselves, and there is no blaming of anyone, but it's just a matter of awareness, and then sees that here, obviously, the so-called precautionary principle is not being applied, which would mean in all instances that before any technology is deployed, just like they have with the quote-unquote pharmaceutical drugs, usually you would need many years of studies.
Many years of studies.
Yes,
and yes,
which then also would have to be done in a way that are really independent, which is the other issue. Many studies don't get published because the results don't fit and so on. However, as far as I understand, there simply hasn't been any decent look at all of these issues. And even if I would only have the slightest idea that this may give problems in terms of, let's say, reproduction or memory or whatever, and well, then this is reason enough, you know, to take a really, really close look. And on the flip side, now is probably the time to wake up and realize that maybe this, what until now has been called government, for many different reasons, not always had your best interest at heart. Also because many of us, in a sense, have been too ignorant in a way, and not self-responsible enough, and not interested enough, even potentially, to look at things ourselves.
Lazy. They're
right.
Lazy. Yeah.
And well, this is kind of what we get, but this is also, of course, what we can change around right now in a very, you know, balanced and peaceful way, simply by knowing what not to support, potentially what companies, and also simply what individual stance to adopt in regards to these things. And yeah, I mean, this is a great topic. As I mentioned, there's many specific shows on Okitalk in German in regards to Austria for anyone who's interested. There's also, I believe, called 5G Space Appeal, and many other sites where one can take a look at all the other voices regarding this idea. However, my impression is this is both, in a sense, I believe, if I'm not mistaken now, what Bashar somewhat channeled at some point, but also what kind of appears to be the, let's say, political situation right now is that Trump, even though no one really yet knows what it is, already talks about 6G. The whole 5G thing is more now seen as a quote-unquote Chi-Com Huawei foreign intelligence operation, let's say. So I would say if individuals continue to stand up, and even in Austria, there's certain places, or how do you call it, not counties yet, but certain cities that already put a moratorium to any extension of 5G because they realize there's too many issues that they do not want to risk, their nice and healthy air and beautiful tourist type spots. So anyhow, many things to look into. But my impression also is that if people continue, to kind of wake up to these ideas and take a look for themselves, that this will not even be deployed in a large-scale fashion at all.
Well, let us hope that's the case. Although it's rolling out here like gangbusters. They had the Super Bowl, the football Super Bowl in Miami this year. So they...
Right, they had the test setting there, right?
Yeah, they really rushed to make sure it was up to speed and full bore, and that stadium full of people all on 5G, man. I was just going, wow, this really sucks. One of the other things I really hate, I'm a big proponent on personal freedom and privacy, and somebody riding around in a car with the right software can look right through your walls, tell exactly how many people are here, what you're doing. It's seeing the things I thought were like Orwell's 1984 and a whole bunch of books like that I read when I was young and thought were fiction. It's really bizarre to see them playing out right before your eyes, and here people are, your personal freedoms are just, oh man, it's a field day on them, and because people are scared, they give them up really easy, and it's an issue of concern for me.
Yes, and I think this brings it back to a great point. Of course, if you want, we can continue expanding because right now there's many interesting things coming up. The other thing I briefly mentioned earlier was the documentary Out of Shadows, which deals with Hollywood and, let's say, CIA connections in terms of influencing plot lines and other much more darker stuff, which actually has already been revealed kind of last year, but I have the great impression that now this is kicking into a higher gear. So, again, to kind of stress this idea that everyone has already heard a 1,000 times, what they say, crisis and opportunity are conjoined at the hip in a sense. And as always, is up to each and every one how to deal with any situation. And as always, whether to choose love or fear. And maybe this, no matter what the detailed technical explanations and mental spheres may be a great segue, if you wish, into the whole idea of the energy techniques and how they may actually help, even on an intuitive level, to choose love over fear, because fear, especially in a, let's say, overdrive sense, never is a great advisor. And how do you think we could make this connection?
Really, I was thinking exactly the same thing, Mr. Man. Yeah, because this is actually very perfect. And one of the things I was going to say, it's good to be informed about those scenarios, at large. But to a large degree, an individual, unless you immerse yourself in the system as it is and try to function within that, a singular person's sphere of influence is, somewhat limited as far as affecting the global thing happening. So really the best place to start is your the sphere of influence you have ultimate control over, and that's your own personal universe. So in the midst of all of this, okay, about two and a half years ago, my teacher turned me on to this book called The Touch of Healing by Alice Burmeister. And it really deals with a technique called Jin Shin Jitsu. And this is a technique that was developed by a guy named Murai, Jiromurai. And he is a Japanese guy. He was born in the 1800s and lived until 1960. And he was like a firstborn son in a family of medical doctors. No, he was not the firstborn. I'm sorry. So, you know, like his brother, all had to go follow the father's teachings and become doctors as well. But since he was down the line, he kind of like did whatever he wanted. He got into silk production and being a playboy. And he became a real alcoholic and party guy, and wound up just living life for pleasure, and pretty much that was it, which brought him to a scenario where this is like, I think in 1912, 1913, he became like terminally ill. And there was nothing anyone could do. He had gone through, you know, his family were doctors, so people had tried everything that they knew to cure him. So he decided he was going to go off into isolation and die. And he went, and I think there was a family cabin out in the woods that he just completely disconnected from everybody. And the first 6 days of that, he like went into this really deep meditation and trying to get his soul and energy right to make the transition to the next one. And his description of that time was, it was really cold, and there was just like this really super cold energy. And after he was practicing a lot of acupuncture techniques that he had modified, in addition to some real specific breathing techniques, which I've got a really good one of those too. I'm going to bring up later. So like after the 6 days of his meditation and working on him, he got blasted with this really intense heat, and his whole body returned to normal. And after a week, he came back down and was completely healed. And from that moment on, he devoted his life to more research in this area, and trying different things and tying different scenarios of energy work, acupuncture among them, and some other metaphysical scenarios, some of the Hindu breathing techniques, mudras he uses a lot. So it became his own kind of cosmology of ways to heal. And I latched onto it in part just because pretty much everything my teacher has turned me on to, whether I kept it or not, was really interesting and worth examination. So I dove into it. And one of the things I love about these techniques is their absolute simplicity. I'm going to take you through like the beginning parts of this, which is a 6-step thing called the 6 depths, and it really relates to you using your hands and connecting your hands on different fingers to elicit different effects. And you know, a lot of I get accused by my students a lot of making things that giving them work to do that they have to do too much homework, and it takes too much time and too much effort to get to the effect that they want to get to. So the thing I love about this is that it is the next best thing I know to doing absolutely nothing. You could sit there and watch television and do this technique, and it would be effective. It doesn't require your conscious mindset to drive the work or to channel the work. It's you can. I've even gone and done this technique from from zero space, and it's amazing with your mind shut off, letting this actually happen. So let me kind of get into some of these. Like I said, it really relates to using your hands and your connection of your two hands to elicit different effects. And the first, he refers to them as depths. And the very first depth is grabbing your little finger and holding on to your little finger with your right hand, where your right hand is circling and clasping your little finger in its grip. Now, let me also say, I'm saying left and right hands right now because I'm a right-handed person. So energy flows into you and up into you through my left hand if you're right-handed. Would reverse that if you're naturally a lefty. So the first depth relates to the function is the skin surface. It relates to the organs of your spleen and stomach. And the thing I love the most about it is that each of these relates to an emotion and an attitude. And in this particular case, it's worry. And that is a huge one for me. And this was the first one that I attempted. And on the very first try, I noticed a difference in my mindset about that. I said the little finger, didn't I? That's a mistake. That should be your thumb. The element for that is the Earth. The planet for that is Saturn. Let's see, what's the astrological sign? Oh yeah, that's Cancer and Gemini. And day of the week would be Saturday. And the musical note for that is a G. And the way that you would do this is just to sit in a comfortable position, grab your thumb with your right hand, wrap your whole fist around it, and just sit there for 10 minutes, 20 if you can manage keeping your attention. But like I said, you could sit there and talk on the phone. I'm doing it right now. You could talk on the phone. You could be conversing with people. You could be watching television. You have to do absolutely nothing except hold your thumb for 10 minutes.
Just to understand, this would be for worry and anxiety, is that correct?
This is for worry specifically, yes.
Right.
Which is a great one right now. I kind of came to this because all of these relate to, there's one for fear, there's one for anxiety and pain, So that's the first step, and that's your thumb. The second depth is your little your ring finger. Yes, your ring finger, and that's your deep skin, your lungs, and your large intestines, and it deals with the attitude of grief, which is voluminous at this time of the world. There's a lot of grief out there. It's your ring finger, and that's the element for that is your mental capacities, or your air capacity. The planet for that is Venus. The astrological sign for that is Aries and Taurus. The day of the week for that is Friday, and the musical note. Oh yeah, the color for that is color for that is white, and then the musical note for that is an E. And again, all you're doing is grabbing your ring finger with your right hand and just holding that. And
Okay, just to give some feedback, as I am right now correlating this to a Taoist correspondence table I made some year ago from, I believe this was Eric Judelov's book, who was a student of Mantak Chia, Tao of Love. And pretty much everything you described, I think, lungs, large intestine, skin, respiratory system, white, white color. And this here in this Taoist system would relate to the index finger. I'm just pointing it out because it's interesting that this seems to correlate, but not completely. But kindly continue.
well, I don't think this is the only way for this to happen, but this method does in fact really, really work. So just to review again, we're looking at the thumb to deal with worry. We're looking at the ring finger to deal with grief. Then the third finger is your middle finger, and that deals with blood and your life essence. The organs are your liver, gallbladder, and the attitude for this is anger. And yeah, I actually use this one quite a bit. I actually use them all like on a continual basis. The element for this would be wood. The planet would be Jupiter. The astrological sign is Pisces and Aquarius. Day of the week would be Thursday. The color would be green. And the musical tone for this is a C, a middle C. And again, that deals with anger, and that's clasping your middle finger. Then the fourth depth, you're clasping your index finger for this one, and this is circular system. And I use this a lot, because I have had diabetes in the past. My kidneys and bladder and liver all need some tender loving care, so I make sure to give it to them. And this fourth depth deals with the kidneys and the bladder, and this is the one that deals with the attitude of fear. And right now, what could be better than to be able to just kind of transmutate that emotion into a space of tranquility and peace. The element for that would be water. The planet would be Mercury. The astrological sign for that would be Scorpio and Libra. The day of the week would be Wednesday, and the musical tone for that would be F. I bring up the musical tones not in just throwing it out there and passing, but I enjoy, I've got so many songs that I've written for practice and just whatever, and I have musical scenarios and songs to play that come out of the keys for these, and I like playing those while I'm actually working on those areas. It's great. You can do these as just a singular, like you're having a fear attack. You can just attack that one finger. You don't have to do your entire hand for that, although that's feels really great after you do, I have to say. So let's see, let's move on to the fifth depth. And the fifth depth really deals, that's your little finger, and that deals with skeletal issues. And the whole gig behind this is when there are maladies happening, it represents a blockage or an interruption in the natural energetic flow that happens within your body. And the mindset behind these is not just that you're grabbing your finger, but that you're, they call his reference word for this is you're jumper cabling yourself. So you're creating the circuit of energy that starts flowing through your body without any effort. And that energy, what it's doing is not really healing something that's wrong, but balancing the energy that is producing the effect that is negative. So again, the fifth depth is the skeletal, that's the heart and the small intestines. Again, that's your little finger. And the attitude that this one deals with is a really good one, man. It's the attitude of trying to, or the pretense of making yourself look a certain way, even though that's far from the truth. You know, the element for that is fire. Planet is Mars. The astrological sign for that is Leo and Virgo. The day of the week for that is Tuesday. The color is red. And the musical tone for that is A. So lastly is the fifth depth. And that is taking, you're going to take your thumb on your right hand and place that in the center of the palm of your left hand, and then interlock your fingers over the top of your left palm so that you are connected with your whole hand over the top of your left hand with your thumb exactly in the middle. Yeah. That relates to kind of spirit. That's your diaphragm and your umbilical, and the attitude for that is total despondency, and it's the element for that is the primordial fire, and the astrological sign would be Sagittarius and Capricorn, and the musical note for that would be D, and that would probably really kind of synchronize with the idea of spirit in the Western concept of elements. So,
can you briefly repeat the hand position for this one?
Yes. So you have your palm of your left hand open with your thumb up, and you place the thumb of your right hand right in the center of your palm of your left hand, and then bring your right hand and wrap it around the rest of your left hand. So you've got your left hand clasped in your right hand, but the tip of your thumb is pressing right in the center of your palm.
Right, so basically clasping the entire hand, including the thumb. So the right hand isn't, yeah.
Well,
It's holding the left one.
The left thumb would, it's kind of like you interlock your where your thumb and meets your hand. Those two places are interlocked. So like your thumb on your left hand would be laying over the top of your right hand that is grasping your left, so that they're interlocked. You're not wrapping your hand around the thumb, just the fingers and palm of your hand. And then your right hand has your thumb pressed into the center of the palm of your left hand, so that you're kind of like clasped together there.
Right, and the left hand's fingers in this case are just straight, or also
exactly. Yes,
yeah,
that's
right.
exactly right. Yes, exactly right.
Got it.
So takes about an hour to run through all of that. Maybe a little longer if you go to the 20-minute level, but and it's so easy to do, and to have something that's so simple that actually is me, Raphael. It's like I test it out. If it doesn't work, I chuck it. It's like, okay, it's good to know that, but that's not part of my own personal cosmology. And I have really absorbed this as part of a daily bit of practice, and it's just gotten I've done it so much that I've gotten to that muscle memory area with most of these. And like the second I feel some really intense worry, I mean, every way I have of making money has gotten shut down right now, man. I'm like, wow, okay, we need some new thinking. And there's part of me that wants to just grasp onto that and go, oh my God, I'm going down. What am I going to do? I'm so fucked, and that only ensures the continuation of that condition and cementing that condition even more. Thoughts have wings, what we think we freaking become, so being able to address those and face it, worry, fear, anger, grief, those are some of the most intense emotions, and to be able to have a way to simply manage those has become a really valuable tool for me. So I certainly hope you grasp onto it and test it out. I'd love to hear what you think on your own investigation. And right now, I can't think of anything easier or better to be able to do. And I mean, pretty much everyone I know, with the exception of just a couple people, are sitting in their houses right now. The state of Florida is on mandatory shutdown. You can't go out. There's not supposed to be meetings of anyone at all, unless you're actually physically living in the same house. You can't go anywhere without a mask. There's like all these like rules, restrictions, regulations that keep you inside. So what better time to use that time to, build up your own personal attitudes and emotions about this whole situation, because it's really intense. And as you well know, man, there's so much information and misinformation just running amok, that how you feel about all that stuff, you get emotional prods all the time, some of them unintentional, a lot of them very intentional. And I love not offering myself to to getting manipulated like that. I like to keep my emotions in the good zone, because when you see the possibilities and you see, in the midst of all the darkness, that there really is light, and while you in some ways could look at it like, wow, I'm powerless in this situation, you're not powerless in your own situation. And I think this is a really amazing tool for that. That's kind of like the opening part of the book. But the book also goes into many, many, many different techniques, one of which really kind of like corresponds.
I would say, Bryan, let's go into all of that after a brief break, if you agree.
Yeah, sure. That's great.
So all I'd like to say, just to reinforce the idea of what you mentioned in terms of jumper cables, there is also something called Carillion Photography, and there is a Russian guy whose name I don't know right now, but I tested his device, which is like a type of aura photography where you basically put your fingers into this thing, and whatever type of thing that is, but they can measure it, and they measure your auric field and your alignment and the strength of your field, I believe. All I can say is I did this 2 times, and the first time I was pretty off, and then I meditated for a few minutes, did it again, and I could clearly see that these 2 charts correlate, but it was basically the same, but just all the chakras were slightly more balanced, which kind of would have been the whole idea. But it was obvious this is not a random other picture, but it relates to the previous picture. Absolutely. So I was happy I got to check that out, and this may just reinforce the idea that if the cusps of the fingers are even used for this type of photography, let's say, it makes, and you look at old pictures or old that show energetic systems, it's kind of obvious, like where else should energy flow out and in than, for example, your fingers, of course, everywhere, but also here. So this is just to reinforce the idea that the fingers also are holographically representing the entire body, and maybe particularly important, let's say, gateway points as well.
Absolutely. And you just made a point I want to touch on real quickly. I was really, kind of focused on our physical bodies and our physical emotions, but those intense emotions affect our auric field so deeply, and being able to, it's like when we've touched on this before, but when you are in a really intense fear space, that's some really jacked up energy. And if you focus on that fear and you focus on the thing that you're afraid of for a while, you can build structures in your second band of your aura that, if left unchecked and if you continue to feed those, grow into, kind of weird little cancerous ganglia kind of things that then proceed down through your second band, through your first band, and then into your physical body. And then you actually are sick. You get cancer, you get, hypertension, you have a heart attack, So these techniques that we're talking about right now, it's a whole body therapy, for lack of better, or technique rather, and really, really valuable in that sphere as well. So with that, I'll shut up and we'll go to a break.
Yeah. The Wizard of Oz, edition 12, Jin Shin Jitsu Energy Techniques. Bryan, how'd you like the track?
As always, you have this uncanny ability to pick out exactly what I want to hear at the moment. So thanks, as always. I'd love to get like a whole playlist of everything you've ever played on this. It would be amazing. What a great party tape. Yeah.
It's just a reminder, every hour play some good music to remember that life is a party. So with the proper energy techniques, we can enjoy it even more.
Yes, exactly. So where we left off was going into these scenarios called, Hierophant wound up really going deeply into a lot of Zen practices. As a matter of fact, he brought his Zen meditation techniques to his time. Excuse me, when he when he thought he was going to expire, and he went and secluded himself, and because of his his family, he'd been exposed to lots of acupuncture techniques. And have you ever had acupuncture, Raphael?
No, unfortunately not. No.
That's an interesting technique, but I've never been fond of needles. Even needles carefully placed just sort of drive me crazy. And so anyway, these energy, he calls them energy locks, and there are points on the body that you can just touch and make connections that can address really, really different things. Like you can address specific organs, you can address muscular issues, anything where you're out of balance in the body at all. And let's see. Yeah, okay. Here, let me pull this one up. It's safety energy lock number 5, and it's about regeneration, generating your cells. By the way, remind me to talk about fasting before we end today, okay?
Right.
And this is so simple. It's like you know where your leg goes down to your foot and your heel, on the inside of your heel, you know, there's kind of that indention, you know, in it right behind your Achilles tendon. And,
Right.
and yeah, that's all you have to do is press on that. And you can press on both of them at the same time with you want to use opposite hands for that. Like you'd use your left or your right. Yeah, your left on your right ankle and your right on your left ankle. And just doing those is kind of like an acupuncture scenario. You know, another one is like on the underside of your foot, like right behind the ball of your foot, behind underneath your big toe. There's, you know, that where that bone kind of falls off into the arch of your foot. That's a pressure point right there that helps with an overall balance and your mental discrimination. You know, yeah. You know, I won't belabor this because it bears, you know, your own investigation. Just know that there is something so simple and so easy to do. Again, with all of these, you don't have to go. I mean, it's great if you do, but you don't have to go into a deep meditative state. You don't have to make it into some sort of complex ritual. You know, so many things, you know, have complex techniques, you know, that require a lot of study and a lot of work to get to. But this is just the next best thing to doing nothing. And, you know, right now it is a time in the world where energy is really unstable and out of balance, and a really excellent time for you know, people to take stock of their own being. You know, we don't do that enough, and to be sure, you know, most people are so locked into a, you know, 40, 50 hours a week of work and then all the stuff they have to do. And like, you know, so many times I hear people, well, I just don't have time. I just don't have time. Well, right now, everybody has time. Well, not everybody, but the majority of people have nothing but time, you know, and rather than just sitting and watching Netflix, although you could just sit and watch Netflix and still do this technique.
Exactly.
You know, this is really, I consider this one of my, and he's given me a treasure chest full of gifts over the years, but one of my favorite jewels that my teachers passed on to me. So I throw it out there with love and hope for everybody's continued health, both physically and mentally and spiritually. And you know, these, if you take this on, these really come out really good. This particular book was written by Alice Burmeister, and she is the daughter. Hierophant had two apprentices that really took his techniques and philosophy behind this to heart. And one of them was a Japanese American girl, and this is in the 40s, she studied with him, named Mary Burmeister, who is Alice Burmeister's mother. And she became one of his star pupils. And when she came back to the United States in the 50s, her task, or her charge rather, was to, you know, bring this knowledge and this information, you know, to this country, and to start letting people know about it, and to take on some students of her own and start spreading this. And you know, there are a number of Jin Shin Jitsu places that you could go and it's a very deep philosophy. While on the surface of this, you don't have to go very deep to get the benefits of the techniques, but it also is a philosophical cosmology as well that I just find delicious, and it takes you to this really simple place of finding a perfect balance within you, and become first and foremost in my criteria for whether I pursue something with any kind of length. So, I would imagine this will wind up being, and as always, I'm taking, once you get to that muscle memory part of it, where you've really learned the technique, the technique the way it's been taught. If I do my own experimentation into it and combining different things in different ways, I've discovered some of my own scenarios as well, and would strongly encourage anyone taking this on to look at that as a possibility to add your own experimentations and discoveries to the techniques as well. It's not one of those systems where it's like, oh, this is the only way you can do it, and if you do it any other way, it won't work, and you're outside. It's not like that at all. It's very inclusive in its invitation to see how it works for you, because truly, everybody is their really their own universe, which is a concept that of late has kind of really bloomed for me. And when I look inside myself and look at how big that universe is, and you extrapolate that, thinking how big those universes are in every other person as well, it's kind of like the physical manifestation of the quantum multiverse kind of mindset. We've got like 6 billion universes running around creating realities within themselves. Pretty amazing. So anyway, that's the mindset on the Jin and Jitsu thing. Any questions or comments about that, Raphael?
Well, I think you explained it perfectly, and certainly I always love everything that one can just, in a sense, habituate oneself to easily, and does not need to go out of one's own way, even though, of course, everyone who wants to can meditate 6 hours straight a day or do 4 hours of yoga a day. If that's your trip, that's fine. But it's always cool to have very simple techniques that one can just learn about and then, implement, experiment with, and make your own. And it's great to hear that there are also philosophies and, let's say, schools of that kind that are implicitly inclusive and implicitly open to adaptation. Because also, of course, as Bashar always says, in terms of permission slips, take anything that you like, that resonates with you, and then, of course, make it your own. Change it a bit or a lot, because we ourselves, especially in a balanced state, which what this is all about, are always our own best guidance in terms of what should be done in which way exactly.
One of the things that really hooked me on the particular path of training I've been on for the last 12 years is, I've gotten involved over the course of my lifetime in a bunch of different magical disciplines, and all of those have an element of, it's kind of like, you can't do it any other way except this way, and this adherence to absolutes and dogma and complexity, is not something I really wanted to buy into, and the reason I kind of kept walking the path, and one of the things I love the most about the method of training that I've gotten onto, is that there is a toolbox of basic skills that you need to have in order to progress to the levels that you want to. But those things are only put forth as tools that you need, not as sacred techniques that can only be done with, in this fashion. And the whole mindset behind what your intended goal at the end of this training is to build your own cosmology and make your own magical world sculpted to exactly who you are and your best potentials, and realizing your personal potentials, through your own investigations and your own using these techniques and seeing where they take you. And the other thing is, like, that's the other thing, like all of the specific techniques that you learn, say, the projective technique of spinning the rod I talk about a lot. That's kind of like an analogy for that would be like doing push-ups, to get your body in shape, and that's a particular technique. But, I was encouraged from step one that, okay, now that you've learned how to spin that thing, what can you do with that? And kind of a challenge with my teacher is to, take whatever technique or effect that you're working on at the time, and then what does your own personal ingenium do with that? How does it use that? How does it make that flower out into ways that no one else has thought of? And those explorations are one of the great joys of my life. And man, I can't imagine that there's a lot of people that we have similar points of view on things, or we agree on certain things. But in the end, this way of living and experiencing spirit and the physical world is sculpted to me, to my artist. Like I create with things. I make images, I make things, I make music, and using all of these techniques, like just learning the technique of cleansing your aura and getting super jacked up and charging yourself again, just learning to run that energy through myself and get this ball of amazing creative potential for me to do something with, and then I go and make some art of some kind, and or I'm getting ready to do a working or a ritual, and I create a piece of music out of the numerology of the thing I'm going after. I've been encouraged all along the way, which is quite rare in my experience. I mean, maybe other people have found that different, but I really haven't found anyone else that has encouraged me to take the teachings and explore those, expand those. And one of my great thrills is to come back to my teacher and go, "Oh, dude, I used that effect and I did this," and hear his surprise, like, "Oh, wow, I never thought of that. That's amazing," and to be able to be in this always evolving creative cycle is my favorite way to live life. So, yeah.
That's how it's done.
Yes, it is. Hey, I don't know if you would be interested in this. I've gotten like the prod like 3 or 4 times to do a tarot reading. Would you be up for that?
Of course.
Okay, let me get shuffled up here. Yeah. Maybe we'll do 2 questions. Well, now I don't want to ask about any more about the coronavirus or the crisis. I'm so bored with it. I could just throw up blood.
We actually did a reading on that a few episodes back, and I think it was a good one. So
yes, it was. So, yeah, we'll do one on the
gonna be good.
We'll do one on the Jin Shin Jitsu and the energy techniques.
Right.
Do you do daily readings? Do you pull cards for yourself every day?
There was a time when I was much more involved. Right now I'm using the tarot only very sparingly.
Are you still using your galactic cards as well?
Yeah, I'm using the galactic cards. I'm using mainly those and both of your decks. So the Wizard of Oz tarot deck and the Angel deck.
Right.
But just I can't even tell the period. There is different phases for different tools in a sense.
Right.
So right now I'm not using it so excessively, but time and again. I mean, I got them on my table right now, so they're never far, and some are even drawn. So yeah.
Okay, I've got a good shuffle here now. I'm not sure if I brought this up before, but this is a really cool thing. One of the things in shuffling the cards, you're always looking to get the randomness back again. You don't want some of the connections from your last reading to filter over into this, and to do a regular shuffle, you've got to do it so many times to achieve that. And I happened on a technique called the Norma Cowrie, was the woman that is credited with doing this shuffle, and it's really kind of amazing and super fast. And that's to take the top card and the bottom card off the deck, place those down, and keep going down the deck doing that until you've gone through the whole deck. And then I take the cards, put them back together again. I'll take the center third of the cards and put that on the top or the bottom, and then do another top and bottom card pull, and that randomizes the cards so fast. It's just kind of mind-boggling. A really cool shortcut.
Can you spell her name?
It's Norma, and I believe that's Cowrie. Norma Cowrie. Okay, let me get focused just for a second. Wow, very cool. Okay, so my question was, what would the outcome of people undertaking this technique and practicing this technique? So the first, I'm doing a 4-element reading, where the vertical columns are the individual elements: fire, water, air, and earth. And it's also an immediate past, present, and immediate future horizontally across it. So the top layer would be how that manifested with that energy, and down the line. So the first column would be the fire column, and that's the energy surrounding the situation. And the very first card is the Ace of Wands, which is the beginning of new energy. Awesome. The second card is the 2 of Pentacles, which is about balance and perfect energy flow between 2 spheres. And the last card is Lust, which is absolute primal fire. So that whole first column just glaringly screams about dealing with your energy. And that second card, the Two of Pentacles, that always represents balance. And in my card, in my deck, it's two spheres, and there's a perfect rim of energy that circles both of those spheres, and in the center of it is an infinity sign that just represents that moving constantly in a perfect flow. And then lust, as always, that pure primal energy that like just is all consuming. Really awesome. Okay, so the second column is the water column, and that would be the emotions surrounding this. And the first card is the Two of Wands, which is a great card, but in a water column, that fire is a little subdued. So that's about two people affecting another. That's about also affecting your own outer and inner selves, and applying energy to correct and maximize a situation. Okay, then the next card in the present would be the Five of Wands, which is also a fire card in the water column. So that's a little bit ill-dignified. But that's about some arguments and clash of energy, which honestly I think represents, when you look at the attitudes that the Jin Shin Jitsu techniques are addressing, you've got worry, you've got fear, you've got anger, you've got grief, and all of those strongly relate to that particular card and the intensity of where those emotions specifically can take you. And the third card is the Magus of the Spirit. And that card is about elevating your spiritual growth, connecting to your ally and your higher knowledge, and being able with skill and dexterity to be able to affect techniques of making magic for yourself. Then the third column is the air column, and that's what's being thought and what kind of plans are happening around that. And the first card is the Hierophant, and that's about adhering to traditional methods and ways of learning, and kind of falling into the way the system has worked up to date. And for me, that, especially in context of this question, that would, since that's in the immediate past scenario, that would relate to actually learning the techniques and coming up to speed with that. Then the next card is the Eight of Wands, which is awesome. And the Eight of Wands always represents speedy news, things happening quickly, and that's one of the real jewels of this. Like the first time you grab your fingers and give that a good go, you can see effect. It's not like you have to practice this for 3 or 4 months before you get any actual tangible results, so that's really awesome. And then the last card is the Six of Pentacles, which is a little bit ill-dignified because that's an earth card in an air column, but that's such a good card that represents success and manifestation of your desires that it's a really it's kind of hard to dilute that card, and that also is in the immediate future. So learning the techniques and rapidly getting on it will actually get you some pretty immediate success. And then this is great, dude. This is just amazing. The last column is the Earth column, and there are 3 Earth cards: the Ten of Pentacles, the Ace of Pentacles, and the Eight of Pentacles. So, the Ten of Pentacles, that's a fantastic card, man. That's about lasting and abiding abundance, material abundance, in the world, and not just money, but satisfaction, having successes in what your plans are, and achieving that where it lasts and doesn't just show up for a little bit, but goes away. That's about lasting and abiding abundance, which is awesome. The second card, which is the immediate moment, is the Ace of Pentacles, and that's the archetype of the element of Earth, and that is about the beginning of any new undertaking, and its manifestation and beginning to manifest in the real world. So, anybody that would want to, take these techniques on, give them a try. You're looking at like abundance, the ability to get started and really crank really fast. And then the last card is the Eight of Pentacles, which is the apprentice card for me, and that talks about, learning your craft and mastering your craft to a very, very high level. So I think in this particular context, that really takes it to a scenario where you're, putting in the minimal amount of effort to learn these techniques will get you a mastery of it really relatively quickly. And, it's, none of this stuff is like, I think there are probably courses you could take, with the Jin Shin. I think there's a Jin Shin Jitsu society, but this is not about getting degrees or certification or any kind of stuff like that. It's about finding your own abilities and your abilities to work on yourself. You're the best magical undertaking you could ever begin, So, again, we have in the fire column, we've got the Ace of Wands, the Two of Pentacles, and Lust. In the water column, there's the Two of Wands, the Five of Wands, and the Magus of the Spirit. And then in the air column, the thoughts and plans, it's learning the traditional techniques. The Eight of Wands is the swift completion of that and bringing things to fruition, and the ease with which you can learn these techniques. And then the last card is the Six of Pentacles, which is, complete success. And then how all of those energies left unchecked would manifest in the actual physical world would be the Ten of Pentacles, the Ace of Pentacles, and the Eight of Pentacles. So go get that book. Again, here, I can't recommend it enough. It is called The Touch of Healing by Alice Burmeister. And it's cheap. I think it's like $10-15 on Amazon. Best investment I ever made.
Amazing. And almost seems to me like in some of the columns, like in the water column, you have 2 times wands, which is fire. I almost have the impression, in a sense, since you spoke about balancing energies out earlier, like, that is also somewhat represented. I know in the way that some individuals do the readings, it would be called ill-dignified, but I see it more like as a, transfusion, alchemy approach. And the one other question I'd have is, what do you think about the idea that all the minor arcana, as far as I can see, are either wands or pentacles?
Yes, the energy and the manifestation, and all the best pentacles. Those are my favorite pentacles. You've got the Six of Pentacles, which is success. You've got the Ten of Pentacles, which is lasting and abiding abundance. You've got the Ace of Pentacles, which is the beginning of manifestation and that initial explosion of a singularity, and the Eight of Pentacles, which is mastery of your craft and the apprentice learning. Yeah. So, and then the other ones are fire, which are the energy that drives that. That is really odd, actually, that it's just fire and pentacles. Yeah.
Well, I'd say from the highest level to the quote unquote lowest level, you know?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And everything and everything in between, except the Wabi cards. I always hate getting the Five of Pentacles. Well, I left out the Two of Pentacles is in there too. So there are 5 Pentacles out of a 12 card reading. That's pretty insane. Hey, I have a question for you. Do you read with reverses?
I deliberately do not, no.
I do not as well. Yeah. I never use those. As a matter of fact, I make sure my deck's always set up so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I don't even mind that too much. However, for me, I'm even of the, let's say, opinion or perspective that I'm aware that, let's say, there are cards that are mechanistically more, let's say, have a growth aspect to them, and others have more like a loss aspect to them. But even to me, of course, this is highly relative. For example, let's say Five of Pentacles. I believe that is even called the Lord of Material Trouble or loss. And I'm like, well, you know, there's some things maybe you want to lose, you know, or you're happy that they're gone. So I'm very much a fan.
You're happy when they're gone after they're gone, but during
potentially, sure.
That process isn't always very fun. And the card in the Rider-Waite deck, where that lonely person is walking by the house out in the snow, looking all cold and decrepit, and looking inside at everybody else having a really good time and eating. You know, it's just like, oh man, okay, this will be good on the other side, but this particular moment kind of sucks.
Right, well, it certainly has that energy. However, even here, if you're aware of the whole film strip, then maybe you're not so depressed at that point if you know the Six of Pentacles is coming right after, right?
Very, very true. That's exactly right. You know, I like looking at a lot of people I know that get readings, you know, they'll look at a reading and they're still remembering readings from 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm like, guys, you know, these are not like edicts sent from heaven, you know, and this is exactly what's going to happen. You know, the thing I like about the particular reading that I work with a lot is that, you know, it shows you the flows of energy, which is what this is all about, you know, and the fire, you know, it's like the energy to do something, and then the emotional thing with deciding what your desire is and how to direct that, and then the air column with the plan on how to undertake that, and then if all of those cards are left unchanged, then the earth column is the likely outcome. It's never written in stone, you know, and when doing readings about an event coming up or something, if it's a wobbly reading, if it's a bad reading, you know, and there are cards in there that like, oh man, that's not the way I would like this to roll. That if you go into those particular areas where they're, you know, screwed up energy flow, and you do something to change that particular card, that particular piece of that flow, then the outcome changes as well. You know, and I like to look at them more as like an astral weather forecast, rather than a truth written in stone, you know. And I read for somebody last week, and she was going, you know that reading you did 5 years ago? And I'm like, well, no, not really. And she's still waiting for that. I think like 5 years of life has happened in between then. She's nowhere even close to the same person she was when that reading took place, you know, and that was kind of like the likely outcome of where she was at that particular moment, you know, not where she is now, you know. And that's why I like to do, I pretty much start the day with a little mini reading and just get the temperature and the precipitation percentages. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's a different type of weather forecast for sure.
Yeah, the astral weather. You know, it's interesting, you know, to when you project out into your astral vision and look at the world, and you just kind of see the flows of energy that happen around the world and how other flows are created that connect to that. You know, a good analogy, although it's not perfect, but pretty close. You know, when you step back out and go out into macro view, you know, you're looking at the world and you're seeing energy flows happening around the world. It's kind of like the cloud formations on Jupiter, and the way the bands of those are happening, you know, and those are the big kind of like those things have little to do with people, you know, and those are sort of the zeitgeist of the moment and the world and what's happening, you know, and then people create flows that relate to their reaction to those events, right, and those things, you know. But it's kind of it's been an interesting exploration to dive into those layers and see what they do and how the world really is a living being in and of itself, and that's a good perspective to arrive at, because it takes you out of the egocentrist perspective and takes you into this perspective where you're a piece of the whole rather than just the whole and everything else is around you, you know. So anyway, I think that's an awesome reading, and I think that anyone at this point that's hearing it, you know, got some good information for the moment. And you know, if you decided to take it on, I think you would have great success, and I hope you do as well, Raphael. I hope you dive into that, and I'd love to hear you know, your experience with it and where you go with it as well. I think this for you would be just like the numerology thing. I think you would absorb it and incorporate it into your cosmology in a really productive way.
Amazing. Thank you. So just to repeat, this is actually available through right here, Penguin Random House. It is called The Touch of Healing by Alice Burmeister and Tom Monte. So there we go. And yeah, it's $19.
There you go.
1997, yeah. Best
money you'll ever spend. Oh, I'd love to talk about fasting for just a second before I think we got a little more time, right?
Oh, sure, let's go for it.
You know, when all of the when the cases started showing up, you know, I kind of had a bird's eye view of what was coming down the pipe, and so I decided to take the opportunity to do a 72-hour fast. And to be honest, I when I undertook it, I was only going to do 36 hours. I've done a 48-hour fast before, but I'd never done a 72, and I was just like, wow, I don't know if I could pull that off. And one of the reasons for doing it, and the main reason for doing it, is fasting, especially after you get past 20 hours. An effect called autophagy, and that's AUTOPHAGY. If you're not familiar with that, check it out. It's an effect that happens in your body where your body starts looking for nutrition, and it starts consuming the damaged cells and the old and worn out cells, so that if you do up to 36 hours, you have replaced like almost all of the damaged cells in your body. And amazing way that it makes you feel. And it also, the other really main reason that I did it at this particular time is it absolutely weaponizes and turbocharges your immune system, so that it is just running at peak performance. And so, knock on wood, so far so good. I haven't gotten brushed with anything. Actually felt a couple of times like something was, trying to latch on, but my system was just so like, bam, no, we're not having it. and got it out of there. So like the first 20 hours of it were a little brutal in that you start to kind of get hungry, but I'm this is my experience. I found myself playing mental games with myself at the time. It's like the times of day that you ritually eat and consume food. When I got to those times and past it, my mind is going, dude, you need to eat, man. You need to put some food. You're gonna die. You're gonna starve. And staying resolute through that and pushing through that. When I got to like 24 hours, okay, let me back up just a little bit. Like 18, 20, 21 hours, I was feeling a little sluggish, and my brain was kind of like not working as fast as it usually does. And I'm like, wow, okay. Luckily, I didn't have anything to do except do this. So I was in a place where I could just allow that to run the way it wanted to. And then when I got to like 24 hours, that kind of fog lifted like really quickly. And I started achieving this state of clarity that was really kind of amazing to me. And as that progressed up to the 36 hours, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And all those addictive voices that were going, dude, we gotta eat, get some food, all those shut up. And when I reached 36 hours, I was like, wow, man, I feel amazing. I was strong. I wasn't feeling weak and like out of energy. And the mental clarity that I was able to achieve was, wow, this is really, really good. This is amazing. So I got to the 36 hours and I'm like, dude, you should go for 72. And I went, yeah, all right, let's do it, man. And I rocked it. It was like, I almost continued on, but my body was kind of saying, listen, you can do this again, but right now, give us a little food. But even then, it was very minimal food and super like, it wasn't like, let's go have a big steak. It was all my grains and the super energy food. By the way, do you eat pumpkin seeds, Raphael? Organic pumpkin seeds?
Yes, sometimes, yes.
Yeah, those are amazing. I love what those do for my chemistry.
Well,
So
I'm full in on all the superfood, maca, don't even know, shilajit, organic sulfur, spirulina, chlorella. Too many things to name, probably.
yeah,
So yeah.
there really are. Hey, have you ever experienced this? This is kind of a subtropical fruit. And it grows here profusely. It's called Monstera Delicioso. It's a
Not that I would know it.
it's a fruit. Yeah. That would behoove you to take a look at and see if you can find in your neck of the woods. It's quite an amazing fruit. It looks really bizarre when it's fully grown. It's part of the rhododendron family, and usually anything to do with rhododendrons is really poisonous, and this particular fruit grows out of a particular variety called Monstera Delicioso. Really huge, enormous leaves. I love just going and I have a plant myself, and standing in that, and the fruit winds up being like a long, thick corn on the cob, and it has these bizarre green scale looking things all the way around the outside of it, and it's got super high concentrations of oxalic acid, vitamin C, a bunch of other stuff. It's since I started using that, it's been classified as a superfruit, and now it's getting more difficult to find, but I just love it when I get my hands on it, and the way that you know that it's ripe is that the scales on it start swelling up and separating and then falling off the fruit, which looks like this white corn on the cob thing, juicy corn on the cob. And it tastes it is amazing flavor. It tastes like a combination of pineapple and banana. And man, the oxalic acid is something that gets used up really fast when you're doing projective effects, and you're expending great deals of energy. You burn up your oxalic acid that you naturally get. You get that from oranges, pineapples. There's a lot of fruits that have that you can substitute for that, but replacing that kind of keeps you at a really good sharp edge. And if you're doing any practice with a projective effect of any kind, it's a super good fruit to eat beforehand. Although I've learned through experience, like my teacher can eat that, and then about 4 hours later, he's got his well of energy. For me, it takes like a day and a half, for whatever reason. And I can feel when the wave starts to happen. Like I at first I thought that it didn't work for me. Nothing works for every single person, and I thought for whatever reason, my set points weren't really accepting that. They were just accepting. They were just accepting that at a different rate of speed. But I'm sorry I digressed on the Monstera, but I've been meaning to tell you about that for a long time. So anyway, the fast, at 72 hours, you have pretty much replaced every nasty, broken, damaged, aged cell in your body. So you've achieved this refreshing reboot of yourself and your energy. So I've told a number of friends, I know you've done your own fast, so this isn't really like either new news or news that you would find unappealing, but it's funny the faces I see people make when I'm like, dude, you really should think about doing a fast. And they get, oh man. So, it doesn't sound like a really exciting thing to take on, but if you could do that, a couple times a year, there's been a ton of research done in the last few years on autophagy and the effects of autophagy. And it's being touted now, and a lot of researchers refer to it as the fountain of youth, in that it really regenerates so many things, and we're talking about cells in your entire body, your organs, your bones, everything. So I'd love to leave everyone with that piece of information, and invite you to eat yourself. That's what autophagy means, is self-eating. So have you had, I know you fasted before. Have you had a similar experience?
Well, definitely. And, these are things which you have to be ready for yourself and then basically just do. Although you can also probably spend a few €1,000 or dollars to get an assisted fasting type retreat. But with a little bit of research and some feeling for one's own body and not being overly scared, at least for a few hours, everyone can do it. And then basically you get to the stages that you mentioned. And no one in Europe who is usually fed or even badly fed has true hunger issues after only 1 or 2 days. This is usually detox effects and all kind of other ideas. But yeah, generally,
that's I think it's even more than the physical hunger or the detox thing.
Emotional.
I think it's your own mental programming on when you need to eat. At least that was for me,
For sure.
Yeah.
And then you basically get to the stages you mentioned, which is like euphoric type stages. And I researched this once. There is something called GHB, apparently, that is produced upon fasting. So, and that is actually related to ecstasy or something like this in terms of quote unquote drugs. So yeah, it has different types of effects. And certainly you will see it, you will feel yourself, you will feel it on your skin, which usually adapts very quickly to dietary changes. So everyone do your own research, and with the proper circumspection, do your own experiments.
A little trick that works for this, and pretty much anything that's kind of big, like if you break it down to small pieces that you can do, like the first time I did a fast, I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this. And I wound up just breaking down the increments into an hour, 2 hours. And, at the end of each of those goals, you give yourself an option to bag out or to keep going, and as you break them down to the small, manageable pieces like that, they wind up then, the success of each of those winds up fueling the desire to keep going. And, you've wind up, all of a sudden you're at 72 hours, which seemed impossible at the beginning, and all of a sudden you're there, and you're deciding whether you want to go another 72. So if you just break it down into little pieces that you can ace, and this works for the fasting, for practice, for pretty much anything that's a large project. That's how I got through making the tarot decks, and I broke it down. Like my tarot deck seemed, looking at that, having to create 78 pieces of art, and then all of the stuff with the meanings and creating the manual. It just seemed so overwhelmingly huge. And my teacher conned me into just working on the Magus card. That's all I needed to do. Just do that one card. And the thrill of producing that one card became the the plutonium that lit my reactor, you know, and I motored through that project really, really fast. And I kept along the way, you know, I wasn't really thinking about the manual until I got the cards finished, you know, and I just broke it down into little chunks of the project that like I knew I could accomplish. So that's kind of a good mindset to adopt when you're taking on something that's more than just an afternoon adventure, you know.
Perfect. Well, I'd say here we go. Thank you so much. Unless there was anything else you would like to add on at the end.
No, I'm really good. I just would love to send out a blast of love and hope and joy to everyone that's listening right now. And I'd love, you know, I'd love for you to stick around after the music. I want to tell you a couple things that we sort of touched on at the beginning that I'd like to flesh out a little bit.
As always, we continue on. And I hear a cat in the background or something.
You know, I can't even hear that.
Amazing. Well, that's how it is. Thank you so much.
So bizarre, the things that you pick up through this. It's like, what? Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for listening. And catch y'all on the next episode with the Wizard of Odd. As always,
Be in the light.
Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
Radio Talk, Radio